Grace taped the last box shut and spun around with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. 10 minutes to blast off. Space Rangers, she announced, checking her watch. Not for the time, but for the sheriff's cruiser she knew was turning onto their street. To 6-year-old Leo, the frantic packing was pre-flight prep for a galactic mission. He didn't see the pink eviction notice trembling in his mother's hand behind her back, or the way she was sweeping their entire life into black garbage bags like she was robbing her own home. The game began not with a bang, but with a desperate, terrifying lie. "We are going on a mission," she told him, her eyes wide and bright. "A top-secret mission. And because it's secret, we have to travel light. Only the essentials for explorers. The spaceship leaves in 20 minutes. Leo cheered, grabbing his plastic astronaut helmet. To him, the black bags were cargo pods. The sudden urgency was part of the thrill. He didn't see the way Grace's hands shook as she folded his favorite blanket, or the way she paused by the window, not looking for aliens, but watching for the sheriff's cruiser that she knew was on the schedule for noon. He didn't see the eviction notice, bright pink and terrifying, that she had crumpled into a ball and shoved deep into the bottom of her purse, buried under unpaid utility bills. To the world outside, this was a tragedy in motion. It was a young mother losing her grip on the bottom rung of the economic ladder. But inside the apartment, Grace was constructing a masterpiece of deception. She was building a fortress of imagination to protect her children from the shrapnel of their reality. "The rules of the mission are simple," Grace said, kneeling down to look Leo and 4-year-old Maya in the eyes. She forced a smile that stretched her skin tight, masking the nausea rolling in her stomach. "Rule number 1, we are on vacation. Rule number 2, everything is an adventure. Rule number 3, we never, ever look back. Explorers only look forward." Maya clapped her hands, her sticky fingers gripping a headless doll. "Are we going to Disney World?" she asked. "Better," Grace whispered, choking back a sob that threatened to shatter the illusion. "We're going to the Hotel of Mystery. It changes locations every few days to keep us safe from the boredom monsters." They marched up to the car, a rusted sedan that rattled when it idled. To the children, the car was the Falcon, their trusty vessel. They piled into the back seat, surrounded by the few possessions Grace could save: clothes, a box of dry food, and a pillowcase full of books. To Grace, the car was a terrifying variable. The gaslight had been glowing a menacing orange for 2 days. Every turn of the ignition was a gamble. As she turned the key, she held her breath, praying to a god she hadn't spoken to in years. The engine sputtered, wheezed, and then caught. "Blast off!" Leo screamed. Grace pulled away from the curb just as a county vehicle turned onto the street. She didn't look in the rearview mirror. She couldn't afford the luxury of grief. She had to navigate the immediate geography of survival. The drive was a masterclass in distraction. Grace turned the radio up, singing along to pop songs she hated, drumming her fingers on the steering wheel to hide the white-knuckle grip she had on the plastic. She wasn't driving toward a destination. She was driving away from a life. She calculated the math in her head, a cruel equation that never balanced. She had $42, the cheapest motel she could find online, using the free Wi-Fi from the library parking lot earlier that morning, was $38 a night, plus tax. That left nothing, absolutely nothing. "Look at the lights." Maya pointed out the window as twilight settled over the city. They were driving through the industrial district, an area of town where the street lamps flickered and the sidewalks were cracked veins of concrete. To Maya, the neon signs of pawn shops and liquor stores were jewels in the night. To Grace, they were warning signs. She was scanning for the Starlight Motor Inn, a place with 1 star on Yelp and a reputation for looking the other way. When she finally spotted the sign, a flickering blue star with the S and T burnt out, she announced, "We have arrived at the palace." The motel was a horseshoe of peeling paint and stained stucco surrounding a pool that had been filled with concrete years ago. But Grace parked the car with a flourish. "Wait here, Space Rangers. I have to negotiate with the gatekeeper." She stepped out of the car, the humid air sticking her shirt to her back. Inside the bulletproof glass of the reception booth, the night manager sat, a man with skin the texture of old leather and eyes that had seen every version of desperation the city could produce. Grace placed her crumpled bills on the counter, smoothing them out with trembling fingers. She laid down the coins she had scavenged from the car's ashtray. It was a humiliating ritual, counting out pennies and dimes while a stranger watched with bored indifference. "Just one night?" The manager grunted, not looking up from his phone. "Maybe more," Grace said, her voice steady, though her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "We're in between places right now. The manager looked at her then. He looked past her, through the window, to the two children pressing their noses against the glass of the car. He saw the piles of clothes. He saw the desperation she was trying so hard to dress up as dignity. He swiped the money into a drawer and slid a heavy brass key across the counter. Room 104. Keep the noise down. No guests. Grace took the key like it was a scepter. She walked back to the car, transforming her posture with every step. By the time she opened the driver's door, the exhaustion was gone, replaced by the manic energy of the tour guide. "We're in," she cheered. "The gatekeeper says we have the royal suite." The room smelled of stale cigarette smoke and industrial lemon cleaner, a chemical cocktail that made Grace's eyes water. The carpet was a kaleidoscope of brown and orange patterns, designed specifically to hide stains. But when Grace unlocked the door and swung it open, she didn't let the kids see the grime. She saw the room through their eyes, and she narrated the transformation. "Look at this," she gasped, dropping the bags. "2 giant beds. It's a bouncy castle kingdom." Leo and Maya didn't hesitate. They launched themselves onto the mattresses, the springs groaning in protest. Dust motes danced in the yellow light of the bedside lamp. Grace laughed, a genuine sound that surprised her, as she watched them bounce. But while they jumped, her eyes were scanning the room with the precision of a crime scene investigator. She checked the corners for roaches. She pulled back the sheets in a swift, subtle motion to check the seams of the mattress for the telltale rust spots of bedbugs. "Clear. Thank God. Okay, Rangers, settle down," she commanded playfully. "It's time for the royal banquet." The reality of the banquet was a single can of ravioli and a box of saltine crackers. They had no microwave. They had no plates. Grace had stolen 3 plastic spoons from a gas station on the way over. She sat them cross-legged on the floor, spreading a towel out like a picnic blanket. "Because we are in the Hotel of Mystery," she explained, popping the tab on the cold can. "We eat like kings of the wild. No tables allowed. Tables are for boring people." She spooned a cold, congealed pasta onto crackers, her hand shaking just enough to spill a drop of red sauce on the carpet, blood in the water. To Leo and Maya, this floor picnic was a rebellion, a delicious breach of protocol. They giggled, faces smeared with orange grease. "Aren't you eating, Mommy?" Leo asked, extending a cracker topped with a single, precious ravioli. Grace felt her saliva glands ache, a physical pain shooting through her empty jaw. She looked at that cold pasta like it was a 5-star steak, her stomach twisting into a hard, cramping knot that nearly doubled her over. "Oh, did you hear that? That was the tiger within." "But the tiger isn't hungry for ravioli. The tiger ate a huge buffalo for lunch while you guys were napping. I'm stuffed." She pushed the cracker back toward him. "You need your strength for the mission tomorrow." She watched them eat every bite. The smell of the tomato sauce was intoxicating, making her mouth water until it hurt. She felt lightheaded, the edges of her vision blurring slightly. She hadn't eaten since a piece of toast at 6 a.m., but she knew that if she took even one bite, there wouldn't be enough for them to feel full. And if they weren't full, they wouldn't sleep. And if they didn't sleep, the illusion would break. After dinner, the sun went down, and the true character of the Starlight Motor Inn revealed itself. Outside, the shadows grew long and sharp. Voices raised in argument drifted through the thin walls, harsh words, shattered glass, the heavy bass of a car stereo rattling the window pane. Maya looked up, her eyes wide with sudden fear. "What's that monster sound?" she whispered. Grace didn't hesitate. She grabbed the flashlight she kept in her purse and clicked it on, shining it at the ceiling to create a circle of light. "That," she said, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper, "those are the dragons. They live in the parking lot. But don't worry, they're guarding us. They make loud noises to scare away the bad dreams. As long as we hear them, we know we're safe." She spent the next hour making shadow puppets on the peeling wallpaper. She turned her hands into birds, wolves, and butterflies. She wove a story about a family of explorers who traveled from castle to castle, always one step ahead of the sorcerer of sadness. The kids were entranced. The ugly sounds of the night, the sirens wailing in the distance, the slamming doors, became the soundtrack to their adventure. Eventually, the sugar rush of the imagination wore off. Maya curled up under the thin, scratchy blanket, clutching her doll. Leo fell asleep with his head on Grace's lap. The room grew quiet, save for the hum of the mini-fridge and the soft breathing of the children. This was the moment the mask fell. Grace slumped against the headboard. The smile slid off her face like melting wax, revealing the raw, terrifying exhaustion beneath. Her face was gaunt in the dim light. She looked at her children, their innocent faces relaxed in sleep, unaware that they were homeless, unaware that their mother had exactly $0 to her name, unaware that the car was almost out of gas and that tomorrow was a blank void of uncertainty. She wept silently. She had perfected the art of crying without shaking, letting the hot tears slide down her cheeks and drip onto her shirt without making a sound. She was grieving the loss of her own safety, the loss of the future she had planned. She felt the crushing weight of the ceiling, the walls, the city pressing in on her. She was a single point of failure. If she broke, their world ended. Then, a knock at the door. It was 3 sharp raps. Authoritative. Heavy. Grace froze. The breath caught in her throat. She looked at the digital clock. 11:30 p.m. She gently shifted Leo's head onto a pillow and stood up. Her legs felt like lead. She walked to the door, checking the peephole. It was the manager. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced her chest. Had the credit card been declined retroactively? Were the kids too loud? Was he kicking them out? She opened the door a crack, slipping out into the humid hallway and pulling the door shut behind her to seal the fantasy inside. She stood in her socks on the dirty outdoor walkway, facing the man. "Yeah?" she asked, her voice trembling despite her best efforts. "Card didn't run for the deposit," the manager said, chewing on a toothpick. He didn't look malicious, just transactional. "Need $50 for incidentals, or you gotta go." I paid cash for the room," Grace stammered. "You said it was okay." "Room's paid. Deposit isn't. Policy. Needed in case you trash the place." Grace felt the blood drain from her face. "Please," she whispered, conscious of the thin walls. "My kids are asleep. I don't have $50 right now. I get paid on Friday. I swear. I'll give it to you then. We won't touch anything. We won't use the towels. We'll sleep on top of the covers." The manager looked at her. He saw the wet tracks of tears on her cheeks. He saw the way she was hugging herself, trying to make her body take up less space in the world. He was a man who had seen everything, and usually he didn't care. Business was business, but something about the quiet desperation, the total lack of entitlement, made him pause. He looked at the closed door, then back at her. "We just need tonight," Grace begged, her voice cracking. "Please, just tonight. I'll have them out by checkout. I promise. Just don't make me wake them up." The silence stretched, agonizing and thick. The manager shifted his weight. He took the toothpick out of his mouth and flicked it over the railing into the darkness. "Checkout is at 11. He grunted, flicking the toothpick into the dark pool below. "Don't be late." He walked away, leaving Grace shivering in the humid night air. She didn't slump. She collapsed against the doorframe, gasping for air as if she'd been held underwater. For 10 seconds, she allowed herself to die. She let the terror contort her face into a silent scream. Then, she slapped her own cheeks, once, twice, hard enough to sting, hard enough to bring the color back. She forced her eyes wide, locked the horror away in a mental vault, and painted the smile back on. She opened the door and slipped back into the room. Leo stirred, blinking sleepily in the darkness. "Mom? Who was that?" Grace moved to the bed, tucking the blanket tighter around his shoulders. Her voice was warm, soft, and completely steady. "That was just the room service butler," she lied, stroking his hair. "He wanted to know if we needed extra clouds for our dreams. I told him we have plenty." "Okay," Leo mumbled, closing his eyes again. "Good night, Mom. Good night, my brave explorer." Grace lay down on the edge of the bed, fully clothed, her shoes on the floor within reach. She stared up at the water stain on the ceiling, which looked like a map of a country that didn't exist. She was hungry. She was terrified. She didn't know where they would go when the clock struck 11 the next morning. But as she listened to the rhythmic breathing of her children, a fierce, burning pride ignited in her chest. They were warm, they were safe, and in their dreams, they weren't homeless children sleeping in a dirty motel. They were astronauts. They were kings and queens. They were on an adventure. She had bought them another day of innocence. It was the most expensive thing she had ever paid for, and it cost her everything she had. But as she closed her eyes, she knew it was a bargain. The vacation continued.